template, but based off the experiences they had with me and the way that I've led like the design workshop and just contributed, they're like, you should just do your thing because people are actually listening to when I,
Oh, for sure. Big time.
right, because they're not really listening, they're actually doing. They're literally like, one of the first questions was, please share in your immediate focus groups what is the most viable study skill that you use to help you achieve your academic goals. And right away, like, people were willing to talk, right? Because
oh yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so that was really
I mean,
cool.
that's one of the things, like I'm not good at that yet, but that was like one of the things that I realized, probably, I don't remember, man. I don't remember when this came into being in my mind, but I was like, I was basically trying to get buy-in, and I was like, why is it that literally I had this experience where I said something to a student, and I spent like 45 minutes in an office hours alone with that student, right? And then the next day, one of my other students that I had a really good relationship said that the student, the student left the office hour and was just like, I could tell like every minute that I just spent was wasted, right? Like there was like that resistance, and they were like telling me, and then the next day a student said it to the other student, and the person was like, oh, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, this isn't. And then what I realized was like, so much of the power, because if I was that student's peer, that student probably would have interacted with me a lot differently, right? But so much of the power of learning comes in the process of sharing and the process of developing those relationships. And from that standpoint, it's actually better if the narrative comes from somebody where a student can see like, oh, that person's like me, they're in the same position, rather than a teacher who has hierarchical power over that student, who has the ability to create grades, right? Because then when I say stuff, it's literally like, oh, he's telling me to take out the dishes, like, or he's telling me to clean my room. Like, who the hell is this person? He doesn't know. Even if it's the same exact message, right? Because what ends up happening is that this is why I want people to call me Jeff, right? The more that power, the more that the student sees, most students see professor or student. I want it to be student professor, right? Like, I am in the service of that student, and my whole job, like, they are my boss, right? But to do that, there's just so much work that has to be done on the curriculum development stage, so that my role in class is not to deliver curriculum, but then there's also a lot of work to be done on the student development of sense of self, right? Because in order to be able to recognize like, oh, this person is serving me, this person, I can really use this person to my advantage. Let me go make him do work for me. They have to have a sense. They have to have many, many layers of sense of intrapersonal knowledge about self, right? And then not only knowledge about self, but the hope and the desire to navigate that particular dynamic and relationship for some goal, for some end, right?
Right.
Whereas it's so much easier to just put all that into the hands of the teacher, because it doesn't take no development has to happen for the student, right? It's all on the teacher or not. And then, yeah. So anyways, what you're saying is exactly and what's so awesome. I think one of the things I want to learn from you in that way, because I think you're really, really good at that. I think one of the things that you're developing way earlier, I mean, I'm still thinking about this myself, is like, how can you do that in practice, right? Like, how do you create that environment in practice and ask those questions? And what a beautiful thing, Henry.
Yeah. Well, you are working really hard at that on a day-to-day basis.
I fail a lot. The number of times I fail is like the number of days that I live.
I think one